Think of yourself now. Look at your body and ask yourself, how did you get here? I'm not interested in what was your Tuesday morning like. I mean, how did you, as a human being, get here? The answer is by evolution. The idea occurred in 1800s to Charles Darwin, who studied finches, which are kinds of fancy birds, and he studied them on Galapagos Islands. He noticed that on different islands, all those finches looked a bit differently, especially in their beaks. For example, on the islands where the main source of food was insects and catching insects, they had longer and thinner beaks, whereas on the islands where they cracked nuts, fed on nuts, they had shorter and strong ones. Catching insects versus cracking nuts. Those are two quite seemingly distinct ways to get food. And for each one of them, a different beak is more useful. And that is exactly what those birds developed in time. However, this didn't happen overnight. It happened gradually over time by parents, finches' parents, having a child with some random genetic mutation that resulted in that child having a different size of that beak. Randomly. And that size was more useful for obtaining food in that particular environment, be it insects or nuts. Also, on those islands, there is limited amount of space and limited amount of resources, meaning not all the birds can survive. That means that those that are more adapted for obtaining food in that particular environment are more likely to survive, hence pass on their genes that made them more adaptive in the first place, and then thereby evolve. The cycle continues again and again and again, and over time, that's how finches develop their different sized beaks, more useful in that environment. However, this is not only how finches develop, this is also how we as human species develop and evolve in time. We were the ones best adapted to the environment of our ancestors, better adapted than Neanderthals, Homo erectus, or any other early humans. This is how we got here today, by evolution. Look around you now. Look at all those things you see, and ask yourself, how did these things get here? If you guessed by evolution, you guessed correctly. But we have to move from Charles Darwin to Richard Dawkins to understand that. In 1976, Richard Dawkins published a book called Selfish Gene, in which he introduced the idea of memes. In a nutshell, what we spoke before about genes and biological evolution, those genes are units of biological evolution, meaning your bodies and size of finches' beaks are communicated in generations via genes. Biological evolution works through genes. However, biological evolution is not the only one. We also have cultural evolution. And units of that cultural evolution are memes. And what are those memes, you ask? Well, meme is pretty much everything you see around you. The cup from which you drink your coffee, the clothes you wear, or whatever god you may or may not believe in. All those, similar to genes, all those traditions, ideas, things we use, behaviors we do, all those underwent the same evolutionary process. Those memes that were best at surviving did survive and made it to the present day to this rule. However, there is one important distinction between genes and memes. Although the same both undergo through evolutionary process, there is one difference. And that is that we cannot yet alter our biological evolution. We cannot choose which genes we will pass on to our children, although in future we might, as some new technologies such as CRISPR. However, now we cannot really change what genes we will pass on, and we cannot alter our biology. However, what we can alter is what memes we will spread further to both our children and to whomever else we may come in contact with. Because by what we do, we influence what memes will survive and spread. And although we cannot alter our biology, we can alter our society. And I argue that this is actually our duty to do. Because look around now. Not around this room, but around the world. We are divided. Males versus females, left versus right, dog people versus cat people. We are divided. But if we are to remain divided, we will fail as a species, and not even the bastions will protect us. Because we as humankind are facing and will be facing some huge global challenges, such as artificial intelligence or climate change. And these challenges really don't care whether you believe you should or should not regulate our markets. They will come, and we have to be prepared. And first step towards that being prepared is by embracing global thinking. Because in the end, we are all citizens of the earth. And if our biological evolution is to continue, and even our very own existence is to continue, we have to deliberately alter our cultural evolution of society and unite. Be the one who spreads those memes of global thinking. Be the one who spread the memes of bridging the divisions between different people, different opinions. And whenever you, for example, argue with someone about something, argue not to win, but to get closer to the truth. That is how we can build more unified culture. Thank you.